Hello and welcome to another episode of Mordred's Community Multiplayer, Political Chat, as always, joined by Martian. Martian, how's it going?
Very good.
So let's start with the number one great power. We got Alinar. How's it feel? You finally made the migration back to your homeland. Uh, Looks like you've consolidated most of the colonial regions in the area. From a great power perspective, number one. From a economy perspective, right up there. Manpower starting to hum along. Plenty of buildings left to go. Uh, how does it feel?
It's in a really good spot right now. And obviously, it's pretty commanding over the other players in the new world. So I think the biggest question is just how I stay involved in the multiplayer aspect of the game and not just run along and play a single player game from now on.
And speaking of the other players in the new world, you've got Freezing Rage to the north. You've got, I don't even want to say this one, and then Drake's Guard, and then a few colonial nations still remain. What are your plans? Obviously, you're the big swinging dick in the region. Um, are there alliances being formed? Are you looking to let them play their own game and shift your eyes east? Or should we expect some additional colonial conflict?
Um, During the session, I actually announced the implementation of what I call the Supremacy Doctrine in tune with the RP of my nation, in which any nation that is based out of Kenor or came from Kenor has to either provide levy a tax directly to me, or I will buy their provinces from them. Laurent did this for some of their provinces. I bought about 8 of their provinces off of them. But as far as the players that are there, Art Pfeiffer and Drake Scarred both, I'm going to essentially let them play their game. The only thing I'm looking for in that continent is the Leechdin region, as it is very important in my mission tree. But other than that, I'm going to let them to kind of go and duke it out, play their game as much as they can, and probably sell institutions and such to them, and mostly just protect them from any outside forces such as Lorraine.
And then shifting to the north here, Bjarnik has a colonial nation, quite a bit of gold being established here. You can see the development on these gold mines is also starting to tick up. Um, how much of a factor do you think that guy's colonial empire will be in his continued expansion in Kenor?
I think it's a really nice boost for him because obviously, he didn't have super hard expansion, but very quickly got into players and has found himself now in a position where any expansion he does is very tricky diplomatically. So to be able to have not just expansion, but expansion with gold and having all of that trade flow back into his home node, it's a huge boost for him from a financial perspective, and I think it'll help him a lot in his future campaigns.
Yeah, tremendous amount of trade coming in um, into his node, his economy. Not sure exactly where he falls, but 230 has got to be up in the top echelon from a player perspective. Um, Shifting to Kenor now, Goed, Gowed, however you may say it, no longer with us. R.I.P. Slurfin. Um, we knew the knives were coming out. There was talks of a grand coalition. Maybe wasn't as large as some people expected, but was a little bit too much at the end of the day for Slurfin to handle. How much of a power vacuum does this present, or do you expect quick consolidation and a return to the status quo?
I think part of, I mean, there's obviously to an extent some a bit of a power vacuum, but I think the issue was is Gowid never really got to step into a position where they were super powerful. Obviously, by missing the early part of that first session, just generally not having a good time with the AI, Gowid never got to establish itself. So diplomatically, there's not much of a vacuum there. But I think what is very interesting is the new conflicts that will arise from it. Obviously, you have Gnomish Hierarchy wanting lots of their land, Jarnik wanting lots of their land, Castanor wanting their land, even Telgier is expanding into them right now. So it's going to be really interesting to watch the land grab and see who ends up coming out on top of the region.
And shifting a little bit south, we've got Laurent. Um, Still right up there on the great power list. Number 4, still quite a few powerful subjects. From a military perspective, packs quite a punch. Fought both in the League War as well as the war against Gowid, so probably not as strong as they would have hoped economically, but um, still decent income. 180 is right up there. Force limit over 200. Do you see continued tension between Laurent and Demeria potentially, or with Gowid gone, does this present a little bit of a opportunity for Laurent to grow outside the Empire and reduces tension from an east and west perspective?
I think we'll probably see Laurent expand next section, but not really in a fast manner, because obviously he doesn't really have to hurry, right? I mean, Gnomish Hierarchy to his north, a good ally. They're obviously going to make a land agreement, so he doesn't have to go super fast there. He might want to expand into like BPEC, and try and cut off Demeria, but he has no rush to do anything right now. And so it's entirely up to him as how he wants to play right now. Obviously, having issues abroad in the colonies, but as far as on the main continent, he's as safe as can be.
And then shifting to the Empire now, we've got Demeria. Seems to be well established as the number 1 in the Empire from an outside perspective looking in. 120 force limit, 160 eco. You look, Istralor is still struggling to recover. Conwell's up there, but manpower and force limit just don't match up. And then same with Telgier. How strong do you think the remaining players in the Empire will be, and do you think there's an opportunity for them to band together against? We're seeing some outside pressure from Newshire and the Overclan, or do you think it's going to be continued infighting and eventual dissolution of the Empire?
It's hard to tell right now. I think Demeria in particular kind of looks like you might have a more diplomatic, ending to this, just because obviously they've allied to 2 of the players, allied to other members of the Empire. Obviously, they are trying very hard right now to get elected so as to complete their mission for extra morale. But being allied to the players shows that they might be hoping for a way forward as far as coexisting between, them and the other people in the Empire. One thing I will say about Demeria that I would be remiss not to point out is the fact that they only have 10 artillery, which is infuriating to see.
Yeah,
Victor, build artillery.
we are approaching the point in the game where you're starting to get a few more fire pips here. Tech 16, I believe he actually might be behind on Tech. Yeah, Tech 16 definitely got to have that full back row. Yeah, not sure what his plans are there, but yeah, Artie Fire +1 at Tech 16 is huge. Shifting slightly to the east now, I actually sneaky think from a player alliance perspective, Newshire and the Overclan represent the strongest 1-2 combo in the MP right now. Interested in your thoughts on that.
I think there's definitely lots of truth to that, but I also think that obviously this alliance comes out of challenges, right? Both by having Saranvar, having dwarves, having Castanor, there's a lot of potential enemies that they'll have to fight. It'll be interesting to see how long they can last out. Obviously, you saw Gawad and Bjarnik, where really strong alliance, but after enough wars, it kind of just falls apart. But I think they're both in exceptionally strong positions, obviously in a good position to win the current war they're in. And if they can beat Castanor, they will be the dominant power couple for the rest of the game.
Yeah, so we've got Castanor, obviously a large number of claims on Newshire. Up until this session, relatively friendly or amicable relationship. My understanding is Newshire broke an agreement and took provinces that they had agreed to give to Castanor in an earlier war. Castanor and Istralor, I believe maybe Conwell, I'm not sure who else, attacked Newshire in an attempt to get some Empire land back and also correct that land deal between Castanor and Newshire. ended in a white peace. Do you anticipate constant tension along their border now, or do you think that was just a one-time thing?
I think I think the Castanor player in particular probably would prefer there not to be conflict, just from talking to them. But I think they recognize that it's essential now. With that dynamic having been set up, it's kind of unavoidable to have conflicts. But the trouble, of course, is that their alliance of Castor and Jarnrik has the looming threat of both Ernat Vir and the Centaurs attacking it at the same time as New Shire and the Overclan. So while those two are probably on paper stronger than New Shire and the Overclan, going against all four of those players at once would almost spell certain doom for the two of them.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. That would be a hard 1-2 combo to overcome. And shifting a little bit south, we got Mine Boy, Wood Elves, Sinravar. He's played a strong game. I disagreed with his decision to move into the mountains rather than moving towards the west into the flooded coast. That's judgment and hindsight. Is this the end for the Wood Elves, or does he have a chance of making a comeback?
I I think this is kind of the end of him being able to dictate diplomacy in the region. I don't think either one of his neighboring players necessarily want to kill him, but I think they do want to subdue him and kind of put them under their thumb. Obviously, he gets lots of huge bonuses in the forest that any player conquering it wouldn't get, and so I would imagine that their plan is just to siphon all the trade out of it, siphon money out of him, and leave him alive, but make sure that he knows his place.
And then his ally to the south, Odval Ludholm, um, bankrupt currently. What? Oh, are we no longer a? No, ruler's still a Witch King. Ooh, dwarven military though, no longer an undead army. What's your thoughts on that?
I think all of the dwarves are in very similar positions right now. All of them, due to the various disasters that they had to go through, are all quite weak at the moment. It's just a matter of which one of them has the best alliances, right? Obviously, Ernat Vir has huge alliance in the Centaurs. Verkal Gulen has a good alliance in Oddval Khanzad, but unfortunately, Oddval Ludham doesn't have the support system that the others do in order to survive the series of disasters they have to go through. And so it's a very hard position for them, especially if the Overclan declares on them after this war against Siren Bar is over. It's just a very hard position for them in the future here.
And then shifting a little bit further south, Keterata, relatively quiet session from them. Just off the Great Power list right now due to the lack of institutional embracement. Actually, a little surprised that they still have not embraced. Probably a money issue. What's going on down here? Are they just crippled from those earlier coalitions? Is there still a chance of them making an impact, or is it going to be relatively quiet sessions from Bjornbar here on out?
I think Hitarata has several quiet sessions ahead, but if you look at their current ruler, it's a 0-6-6, and they've been behind on tech the entire game, been behind on ideas the entire game, and it's really been hurting them a lot. But if they went and got level 2 advisors, sat down, were quiet, put all their money into getting PowerPoints, saved up all their PowerPoints, and just got it back up in tech, I think they're in a great position, especially as they do have a foothold on the in Kenor with the Stalwart Band. So right now they're at a great point to just pause, take a breath, get back up on tech, get the economy running smoothly, and then immediately get back into it. So I think while, it's been sketchy for them, they've kind of been barely floating in lots of moments here, I think Keterata's still in a really good position if they just take the time to make sure they do it right.
And then shifting a little bit further to the east, we've got the Jad Empire. This past session, I participated in the League War, got my first feel for dwarven or elven military in a player versus player war at scale, and a little inside baseball here. The one downside of the elven military, the reinforcement speed really impacted me. Um, Castanor was able to put a large army on the field. Isterlor backed it up with some very strong generals, and I lost several battles right out of the gate. And it takes an extremely long time to recover your regiment strength. Manpower was never an issue, but it would take me months longer than Castanor to recover. I think had I been fighting in my own territory, my economy is strong enough where I could consolidate and recruit new to save time, but moving forward with a large elf army pushing into enemy territory, each battle you fight is going to become harder and harder because humans are just reinforcing that much quicker. It's going to be an interesting dynamic in these late game wars where you're taking hundreds of thousands of casualties in a single battle, and the extra couple of months to recover that manpower, I think it's going to make a difference. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think obviously Jad's in a super interesting position, being one of the two most dominant powers along with Aelnar, but suffers from the exact same issue as Aelnar, as being too far away from the action to be able to effectively actually fight. Obviously, you're next to your three actual players that you can interact with, but they've converted to the Jad. So you're kind of blocked in now, and no real way to go and look outward very easily. It's in a position where diplomatically, there's not really anything you can do other than fight the Centaurs. As far as an actual thing to do against another player, that's kind of it at this point, which is interesting.
Yeah, interestingly enough, uh, we did have some Jad provinces that have since been converted by Ernad Vir, so we got to add them to the list. And then I believe, nope, we still have our Jad provinces over here. But yeah, for the most part, it was a relatively quiet session here in the southeast. Um, Shifting up a little bit, Oddval
One thing
Cons.
I do want to
Oh,
say
yeah, go ahead.
about the Jad first is just click on the Estates tab. And I just want to say that that's ugly. That's ugly right now. Everything else looks so good, but goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. So much red.
Yeah, I've been seizing land.
Sorry, I had to point it out. I had to.
Yeah, I'm working on shifting my nobility control, so I keep removing and re-granting the primacy of the nobility, but I haven't been able to dev a ton because I was a little bit behind on tech, so it's been difficult to keep my crown land up. And then working through an idea group as well, so we'll have that fixed up, no problem, next session. So now we've got Verkelguland and Oddval Khanzad, both of which went through extremely punishing disasters. Both have come out now on the other side. Economically, they're both doing just fine. I believe Verkelguland survived both the Goblin something or another and Horde Curse, and same exact set of disasters for Oddval Khanzad. How long is it going to take them to be in a position to put pressure on Ernad Vir and the Centaurs in an offensive war?
I think a lot of it, oddly enough, comes down to Ernad Vir getting into a conflict with Castanor. Because I think if Castanor, obviously, they've got positions to go into the Serpent Spine, and you could very easily see a conflict there, and then I think that would open up the door for Verkelgul and Oddval Khanzad to come in and kind of try to be opportunistic and get the upper hand, especially with Oddval Khanzad doing a great job on keeping up the tech. All of the other dwarves are looking a little rough on that front, but Oddval Khanzad is tied for best tech in the game right now, which is huge and a great accomplishment, and not to mention it pairs perfectly with the fact that they already have gotten to the Cannons Mark V, which is plus 20% RD damage from back row. So we're getting at a point right now where artillery just got super good with Tech 16 by getting an extra fire pit, his artillery are already the best in the world. He doesn't have much built. He's only got 15 built, but if he builds up a couple full back rows of artillery, I think everyone would be shocked to see how much damage he can do right now.
And you mentioned he started to move through the command a little bit here, taking one of the command's holds. Um, how quickly do you expect to see the rest of the command fall here in the mountains?
It's kind of hard to tell. I think he's been going slow right now just because of the disasters and trying to keep up with tech and ideas. And I think that's why you didn't see a lot of growth this session. And so I think next session, without those limitations, you could easily see all of the command's mountain provinces and the Serpent Spine be under Oddball Kazad's control. I think it also depends on if Burkal Gulen asks for any help in a war. But I would anticipate seeing the command being cut down this next session.
And then we'll shift north, touch on the Centaurs here. Probably, so, player alliance combos, Bjarnik, Castanor, Newshire, Overclan, and then Centaurs and Ernot Veer. Very powerful combos. Centaurs tried to make their move. They tried to get through the northern pass. Oops, wrong one. Tried to get through the northern pass, attacked Bjarnik while Bjarnik was occupied with Laurent. They were rebuffed. I think we mentioned it last week. They may have missed their opportunity by joining in the Dwarven Elven War and letting Bjarnik get in a position to stall them out. Are the Centaurs now reliant on their alliance with Ernot Veer to make gains territorially against other players at this point?
I think in lots of ways they are. I mean, obviously, they've been keeping their border separate from the Jad so as to avoid being attacked, which I think is a great idea. But also, it makes it to where to the south, there's nothing they can do. I mean, there's no way they can expand, no one they can attack. Obviously, most all of the Lake Federation has been consolidated now, so there's really nowhere to go but into Datgun Jarvik, right? And while you might think they could do it, they just managed to not do it, right? I mean, we just saw them get rebuffed, and it seems that the window, while it may not be completely closed, and there may be some wiggle room diplomatically, it's going to be hard for them to be able to actually push any further, especially with Ernot Veer being in a kind of precarious position and needing to take the Serpent Spine right now.
Yeah, just looking at these pips actually. Ooh, Tech 23, these cavalry are extremely strong. 3 fire, 3 offensive and defensive. They may have an opportunity there, but yeah, right now the lack of fire pips and having to fight in woods over rivers might be too much for them, but you bring in the dwarves of Ernot Veer and they may be able to punch through. It'll be interesting to see whether or not Ernot Veer feels they owe the Centaurs something, whether or not that was part of the deal originally. It's going to be interesting to see what Alone does moving forward. How much do you know about the Zeal properties of this formable tag, by the way?
It's incredibly strong. It obviously does have a timer on it, and you can check that by going to the Decisions tab. Currently, he has it settled for 100 years, and through the various missions that can be increased. Like one of them is to have plus 30% cap combat ability, and you get it for an extra 5 years, right? So it's dangerous in lots of ways because obviously if it runs out, you lose all of the bonuses, but also even more importantly, you actually get a special disaster for having it run out. And if that zeal runs out, they could effectively be killed by any of their neighbors. Now, obviously, a lot of time until that happens, and a lot of ways to extend that. And until then, it's incredibly strong bonuses. You can check that in the country modifiers with both the Growing Storm and Unification Zeal. But the highlights of it is plus 15% national manpower modifier, plus 7.5% cap combat, land force limit modifier, land maintenance modifier, morale of armies plus 15%, manpower increase plus 30,000, land force limit plus 30, just absolutely crazy good bonuses. They obviously just can't run out though.
Oh, interesting. Centaur military minus 20% arty combat ability. Yeah, they need Ernot Veer. to make up for some of
Yeah.
these negatives. I just their manpower threshold is quite high, but they don't have a ton of professionalism. Um, right now, their manpower is relatively low. Yeah, it's going to be tough for them to punch through without some cannons backing them up.
One distinct thing they do have going for them, though, is in the mission tree they also have various battles targets versus different races, and in particular the dwarven one gives minus 10% shock damage received. So there could be some merit to assisting Aeronatvir once again in a war, just to be able to have that bonus going into a war against Sharnren.
Yeah, it's interesting. Probably won't be able to get the orcs. Goblins might be tough as well. Gnomes, nope. Kobolds, no. Hemerari, no. Hobgoblins, no. Humans, not that important. The dwarves one, yeah, that might be interesting. And battles against elves. Let's go, Alone. I'd love to give you an opportunity to earn this. Just colonize one of these provinces. So we'll take a zoom out. Obviously, political situations shifting a little bit with Gawad being gone, with the Wood Elves under attack. We've got some ongoing player wars. Where do you expect the majority of the conflict to be this coming week?
I think we're gonna see people keep dogpiling Gawad. Obviously, I think we're gonna see player wars though between Newshire and Castanor, as well as Saranavar and every single one of their neighbors. I think Oddval Kazan or Oddval Bloodham, sorry, is going to probably be attacked by the Overclan and potentially even Aeronatvir after that. I think you're going to see Lorenz dipping their toe in some more player wars. I think he enjoyed his player wars, but I don't think he feels complete and ready to take a break just yet. So I think we're going to continue to see lots and lots of player wars rotated across the game because there are so many people who have great reasons to fight each other right now.
Makes sense. Well, Martian, appreciate the time and looking forward to next Saturday.